Okay, you know what? I think we're going to go through a scramble. What I'm going to do is sequentially scramble each one, because I'm sure you're curious in terms of the movement, and see what we make of it. So again, this is the type of shape-shifting that has more to do with individual components that rotate and go to other areas, but still appropriate corner areas. So turn here. Now, these are two forms of shape-shifting. This is different from what we call jumbling and different from what we call fudging. And at some point maybe I'll do a little tutorial that explains the differences between all of those. But, you know, we can always do our usual scrambles along one plane. Turn, turn. But to get the real exciting part, I'll go ahead and move corner to corner and just start scrambling it like so. Now the process of scrambling these is almost as challenging if you want to get a good scramble going as it is solving. In a way it's a puzzle in and of itself, because you don't have completely different edges. You've got multiple edges of the same color. The difference is of course the orientation. It acts like a supercube when it comes to the center, and it sort of does when it comes to the edges, but only insofar as it has to be in a specific configuration. But there are less colors here, so even in a scrambled state, you're wondering if you could scramble it better, that multiple colors are close to each other. So I'm just going to keep scrambling this, like so. And I can always orient myself in terms of where the face is. Despite that, I know my centers are going to be here. Here are my centers, two edges, corner, two edges, corner, two edges. So I can always orient myself that although it's, quote, shape-shifted, you can always find where your face is. And you can't move it unless you put it in line with your face. See right here, I couldn't move it until I moved this one in. With the cuboids, when they shape-shift, it doesn't really work that way. You don't have to have a face in front of you as long as you're just moving things by the appropriate amount. So as you're scrambling, you got to be sure to line things up. This actually moves very well. And we'll just keep going with it. Okay. Don't want to make it too easy. Give myself a little challenge here. Otherwise, what's the point? Alright, so this is what it looks like. This looks like in a fairly good scrambled form. And you can see, although you could call it shape-shifted, let's just put these in a little more here. There, although you can call it shape-shifted, I can get my orientation in a way that I can't get with the shape-shifted cuboids by a more general approach, as opposed to a specific approach of defining, okay, my face is going to be here, let's start putting in corners and edges. It's already in. Corner, 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 edge, edge, face. So as long as I know that, then I can move them in. Okay, what about this guy? Why don't we scramble this just to see. Now notice this is shaped a little different. This is a pillowed pyramidal shape, and this is, I guess, what you'd call a Rulo shape. Slightly different. I kind of preferred the pyramidal shape because I really wanted to maintain the pyramidal form as much as possible. This does make it a little bit easier to view, but we can just start doing various scrambles in various planes. So as long as I have these lined up in a proper facial coordination, in other words, corner, corner, and here are my faces, turning with the faces in front of me, then I know that I'll be able to make appropriate turns. See, this one is going to get locked out unless I put this where a corner is supposed to be. Once I do that, it turns very easily. And again, there's nothing like handling a handcrafted puzzle. It has just a different feel for it and more crispness to it. And we'll just keep scrambling. And what we're dealing with is, with the centers, not just changes in color that define it as a supercube, but changes in shape. There's very subtle differences there too. And keep scrambling. And again, upon solving it, remember, I'm not trying to get it back into its native shape. I'm not trying to solve it yet right now. I'm just still scrambling it. Like I say, scrambling these guys is almost as much of an effort as solving it. So I'm going to try to line these up. Once I do that, I know I can turn. And once I do that, I can turn easily. You can probably even finger trick this one if I was so inspired to do so, which I'm not. Puzzles are too much of an investment to do that. Designed by Trafim, hope I'm pronouncing that right, who does it old school. Builds them or modifies them. Alright, I think we're doing pretty good. Okay, so this is what this looks like. Now what's interesting is this almost goes back to sort of a cube type shape. But again, no matter how complicated the scramble or how complicated the shape, I can always orient myself with centers, corners, corner, and edges over there. So it's that type of individual component rotatory shape shifting, which is, for me, a completely different concept. So how about this bear? Now this one is almost as much fun to scramble as it is to put in. So same kind of thing. We can just start moving it at various layers. Now look, you can see because of this shape, and come to think of it, this is probably more of a challenging shape. There's more of a marked difference between the different shapes here. This has a very crisp feel to it. Moves very well. Sometimes it moves so well, I get lulled into a false sense of security. I start to move it fast and risk having pieces pop. I've solved these all about 2 times, and in those 2 times, as long as it took to solve, I've only had 2 pieces ever pop out on me, which were easily placed back in. And that was only because it was moving so well that I got lulled into a false sense that I can move it just like a 7x7, and that's pretty much what I'm using here. This is a 7x7. You can see how well it moves. Now it's jumbling. Well, I shouldn't call it jumbling, but it's shifting really well. But if ever I need to, I can just orient myself. Make sure that I've got all of my centers in here. As long as I've done that, I can start moving things fairly freely. I want to separate these reds from each other. So, I want to line these guys up. And this Rulo form is actually probably more challenging than the pyramidal form. You see how this looks more just like a square? This one looks almost more like a ball. Like one of those, I think they're called impossibles. Anyway, I got to make sure that these are lined up so that they're coordinated. And with a little encouragement, a little coaxing, a little persuading, a little begging, pleading, then it can move okay. Sometimes it just clicks into place itself while it's moving. And the more you scramble it, the more you have to make sure that edges are oriented. You can see this here wasn't oriented, so it wasn't gonna move for me. There we go. Once it's lined up, it moves very, very easy. Okay, I'm going to continue the process of scrambling. Oh, and for the record, hocus pocus. Okay, so there we go. And same thing, as jumbled as this looks, although it's not really jumbled officially, as scrambled as it looks, as shape-shifted as it looks, I can always orient myself by saying, well, here's my centers, line these guys up, line these up like so, and I'm always going to find centers in the middle, edges at the side, just divided into different components, and then corners on all sides. So the difference between the cuboid shape-shifting and the shape-shifting here is that I can always orient myself with a side configuration and understand that the supercube motif is either different colors or specific shapes and specific rotations, even on the edges here. So here they all are in the scrambled state. And what we'll do is we're just going to sequentially go through solving each one and various strategies for that. The general approach, of course, is first get your centers in place, then get your edges in place, and the corners are already in place, so then you've reduced it to basically a pyromorphinx, or master morphinx rather, and then just solve it as such, dealing with the possibility of parity.